Tonight, a woman's husband is shot and killed, and she fears she could be next.
But everything isn't what it seems when a decades-old family secret comes to light. An all-new 2020 begins right now.
My husband is dead. I'm missing my right arm. I feel like I'm just missing my life. I don't know what to do.
Miriam gets home. It looked like the house had been ransacked.
She sees Alan laying on the kitchen floor.
He was shot right in the back of the head.
62-year-old Alan Helmick dead.
Here in this parking lot, less than 2 months before Alan was murdered, there was an earlier attempt on his life.
Somebody tried to torch our car. So the car actually got torched.
We found a vehicle that had a wick in its gas tank and had been set on fire.
You ever seen anything like that before?
We didn't know if this person could come back.
Miriam became convinced she was being watched.
She thought somebody was trying to come into the house, and she was scared for her life.
2 weeks after Alan's murder, Miriam finds a dramatic discovery under her doormat.
And she goes, "What should I do? What should I do?" And I said, "You call the police and you get away from there."
There's a card inside that says, "Alan's first, you're next. Run, run, run."
Out here in the western Colorado countryside, the wide open spaces can stretch for miles. In a place this remote, it might seem unlikely that two lonely souls might find each other and a second chance at love. But that's exactly what happened here, until one warm summer day when the peace of this place was shattered by unimaginable violence.
911, what do you have to cover emergency?
My husband is dead.
You what?
My husband is dead.
This was a big story that shocked a small town.
There's stuff everywhere. He has blood under his head.
There was a scare in the community, you know, that something like that could happen. We don't have a lot of crime here.
No, what's got to do this?
Murders just didn't really happen there, especially murders with so many twists, and especially to a well-respected businessman that everybody really loved.
Alan Helmick was a fixture in this community, a man who dedicated his life to helping others achieve their dreams, getting small businesses off the ground and families into their first homes. In fact, he was known as the broker of Main Street.
Alan Helmick was a prominent businessman. He had a mortgage business. Everybody respected him. He was firm, but he was very friendly.
An avid outdoorsman, Alan took advantage of all western Colorado had to offer.
The western slope is just gorgeous. It really is where the West meets a bit of suburbia. And in Whitewater, people have these sprawling homes, very affluent, very safe.
How would you describe this town of Grand Junction?
We pride ourselves on our outdoor activities, our beaches, our wine industry. Great for families.
Alan had grown up in the nearby town of Delta and settled into Grand Junction to raise a family. What was Alan Helmick like?
You know, he was a good guy. He was a great athlete.
Bob Cacchetti was Alan's friend and longtime accountant. Good instincts?
Yeah. Oh, he was a risk taker. He was a gambler. We went to Vegas once, and I think by the time we checked in the hotel, he was borrowing money. He recovered, you know.
He was a good business person. He took a lot of chances, but it seemed to more than not played out and worked well for him.
And definitely not one to shy away from attention.
One time we were in Mexico. A bunch of us were down there on a fishing trip, and the mariachi band came around the restaurant. Alan handed him a few dollars and asked for the trumpet from one of them, and he joined him on the trumpet. And he was really good. It was like, wow, where'd that come from?
So it didn't surprise those who knew Alan that after his first wife unexpectedly passed away, he wanted to meet new people. So he decided to try something different, dance classes. And his instructor is this woman, Miriam Giles.
Yeah, he came in one time and we were doing something and he says, yeah, I just love dancing.
Miriam was a very good dancer, a good instructor. She had me dancing, which was a miracle.
Alan, I believe, kind of had that love at first sight feeling and really wanted to pursue Miriam and did so on the dance floor.
Miriam was 10 years his junior, but Alan didn't let that discourage him. He described meeting Miriam in an interview he did shortly before he died.
She didn't want to date me, but I persisted. She was my dance instructor, so I could go on a cruise and not be club-footed. And we ended up becoming pretty compatible.
Alan seemed reborn. He was so very happy.
They ended up falling madly in love and got married within 2 years of knowing each other.
They would talk about how they would go out on their boats late at night to watch the sunsets together, have an evening cocktail, and just how they felt like they had just found a true partner late in life. It was just like a little fairy tale come true.
It's June 10th, 2008. Typical, beautiful Tuesday morning in Whitewater. And Miriam leaves to go run some errands. Alan was going to get his car serviced, and then they were going to meet up for lunch.
She stopped to get cigarettes, stuff for her horse, even check on a prescription for him.
She went to City Market to pick up his prescription and found out that he hadn't dropped it off. So she called him, could not get a hold of him.
When Miriam gets to the Chinese restaurant, she calls Alan again to see if they're gonna meet, but Alan never shows.
Miriam, after 15 minutes, decides to leave and head home. Miriam gets home. It looked like the house had been ransacked.
At that point, she sees Alan laying on the kitchen floor on his back with blood under his head. She calls 911 immediately. She's sobbing. She's frantic.
It's all bloody.
He's all bloody?
Yeah.
Where's he bleeding from?
It looks like the back of his head. It looks like somebody's been through here.
We knew patrol had been dispatched out to what was reported as a robbery, and then we had a deceased person on scene.
Robin Martin is a detective who worked the case. When the first officers arrived on the scene, they find Miriam distraught and kneeling over her husband.
Alan was on the floor in the kitchen. It looked like he had been shot in the head, and we had a bullet casing next to his body. They did a very quick security sweep to make sure there wasn't a suspect still on scene.
There's no one in the house. As they conduct their sweep, deputies notice drawers pulled out in the kitchen and a trash can tipped over in Alan's office.
In the newsroom, we have police scanners, and we heard the call go out saying there was a robbery homicide out in Whitewater. I packed up my camera gear and went out there immediately. What I saw when I got out there was a scene that was taped off. Multiple officers going in and out of the house, conducting their investigation.
A lot of media attention?
Yes.
This was a big deal in that town, I guess.
It was. Very much so. And everybody wanted to know what was going on.
My wife and I were getting ready for bed. 10 o'clock news come on. The headline was, there has been a homicide in Whitewater.
The Mesa County Sheriff's Office is called out to this Whitewater home.
I kind of jokingly said to my wife, I says, oh no, I wonder if that's Alan. And lo and behold, it was Alan.
What they find is 62-year-old Alan Helmick dead, shot in the head.
It's Detective Work 101 that you start with the people closest to the victim. But in this case, Alan's wife, Miriam, was running those errands, expecting to meet Alan for lunch. She even had the voicemails to prove it.
Okay, Alan, this isn't funny anymore. I've been sitting here in front of a Chinese place for 15 minutes, so would you call me?
Things did not add up. Everybody knew him. Everybody loved him. Who would do such a thing?
The Mesa County Sheriff's Office is called out to this Whitewater home on a report of a possible robbery. What they find is 62-year-old Alan Helmick dead, shot in the head.
After finding her husband Alan dead in a pool of blood on the floor of their Whitewater, Colorado home, Miriam Helmick is brought in for an interview with the Mesa County Sheriff's Office.
Thank you for coming down and helping us get to the bottom of this. We appreciate it. It's Miriam, right?
Investigators are trying to solve this murder. The first 24 to 48 hours are critical, and she is the first person you want to talk to.
Miriam was at our office. As we do with all, what were you doing today? Can you go through your day for us?
I had some errands I needed to run today, so he was we would meet later, so he got in the shower and got dressed.
Okay, what time did you leave?
And what did she tell investigators about her whereabouts that morning?
She started listing off everywhere she had been. She told us that she was calling Alan several times, was getting his voicemail.
Hi, Alan. I just want to let you know I'm going to Walmart. If you're going to meet me for lunch, let's meet at the Chinese buffet. Love ya. Bye.
Then what happened?
I still hadn't heard from him. And then I went from there to Orchard, Mesa City Market to pick up his prescription.
Okay. What time is it now?
I probably got there about 10, around 10.
Hey, Alan. You need to turn your phone on. Question for you. When I pick up your prescription, they said that you hadn't been by yet. So are we still going to be able to meet for lunch? It's not like you to not call me, so give me a holler. Thanks. Bye.
And since he hadn't called me back, I thought he was caught up somewhere to me. So I left him a message and told him I was going home in case he decided to meet me there anyway.
Okay, Alan, this isn't funny anymore. I've been sitting here in front of a Chinese place for 15 minutes, and you're never late. So would you call me?
Miriam's entire morning is accounted for. She even offers up proof of where she's been.
I think I have all the receipts in my pocket.
She actually went from one end of the valley to the other end, and we were able to track her movements, not only by her receipts, but by her cell phone interacting with cell phone towers.
She was tested for gunshot residue?
Yes, she was tested for gunshot residue.
Her clothes were collected?
That's right.
They take those items to check them for any kind of gunshot residue or blood spatter that might indicate Miriam had something to do with this. And those results came back negative.
She's also caught on several surveillance cameras throughout the morning. Miriam seemingly has an airtight alibi. So naturally, investigators are anxious to ask her who she thinks may have wanted to harm Alan.
Did he have any enemies, any problems with any of his contracting work going on, any disputes? Would he share that with you if he did?
I think so. He shared a lot with me.
Miriam said Alan was generally well-liked, but detectives also knew he'd been a local mortgage broker. Could he have turned someone down? Maybe had a disgruntled former client or co-worker who was out for revenge.
He did not like lying or dishonesty. He would fire people for that, but that was respected.
And he had started his own business here decades earlier. Alan had married his high school sweetheart, Sharon, and had 4 children through 37 years together. But on New Year's Eve, 2003, she died of a sudden heart attack. How did that affect him?
Friends said that he was quite depressed and wasn't doing that well.
And soon afterward, he takes up dancing.
He was encouraged to try a new activity.
When Alan met Miriam, I know she had a policy of not dating her students, but Alan was pretty relentless.
Kieran Wilson was a local journalist in Grand Junction, Colorado, who covered this case. Just days after Alan's murder, she spoke to an emotional Miriam.
I met him teaching how to dance, and I didn't really like him. Wow, he grew on me. But he was such a gentleman, and he was so sweet, and just love him to death. You know?
Miriam had been dealt her own difficult hand in life, having faced not one but 2 unimaginable tragedies back in her home state of Florida. Chris Giles is Miriam's son. Grew up in Jacksonville, mom, dad, a sister. What was it like?
It was good. Typical kind of four family. You know, me and my sister were super close. Mom kind of let us to do our things, but it was also there to kind of shepherd everything and help us through.
In 2000, Miriam and her first husband, Jack, were devastated when their eldest child, 23-year-old daughter Amy, died suddenly after an accidental overdose.
How did the family cope with this, with her death?
We didn't really talk about it. After a while, things just started going downhill.
And Jack just, he kind of, he just could not live without his daughter. It just tore him apart.
And then 2 years after your sister dies, tragedy strikes again.
Yeah, my dad took his own life, and I woke up to the gunshot.
Miriam's husband, Jack, shot himself while he and Miriam were in bed.
Mom kind of runs out the door, and she's hysterical, just losing her mind, like a scream I've never heard before in my entire life.
Well, it was a dramatic change in your family. Yeah. The loss of father.
Yeah, you're trying to figure out how to deal with those things. You got to deal with the pain. You got to deal with the hurt. You know.
She turned to dancing after all this.
Yeah, it was kind of her escape, where she kind of felt normal.
And then your mom decides to move to Colorado.
Yes.
And not long after is when Alan Helmick walked through the door of the dance studio where Miriam worked.
Everybody's really happy for Alan. He seemed real happy. Yeah, another chance at love.
Everybody said that her and Alan were kind of a good team for dancing. They were a real couple.
So Alan and Miriam decided to build a house together, and they chose the community of Whitewater. The house was set pretty far back from the road, and it was about a 40-acre property.
Your mom goes through all this, seemingly happy again, and all of a sudden, this happens.
911, what do you have to have your emergency?
My husband is dead.
How did you learn that Alan had died?
She called me. And told me that he'd been shot. Still kind of another shock to the system.
Another loss.
Yeah, another loss.
So far, investigators don't seem to have much to go on. But about an hour into that police interview, Miriam says something that would raise the eyebrows of any homicide detective.
In Delta. And somebody tried to torch our car.
So the car actually got torched in Delta?
Had Alan's killer made an earlier attempt on his life? After Alan Helmick is found murdered in his Whitewater, Colorado home, his wife Miriam is interviewed by investigators. And she tells them about a shocking incident that happened just 6 weeks earlier.
Somebody tried to torch our car. They took a stick or a big like restaurant skewer and put some kind of gauze on it and stuck it down in the gas tank and lit it.
Here in this parking lot, less than 2 months before he was murdered, there was an earlier attempt on Alan's life. Someone tried to set his car on fire. It looked like something straight out of a movie, but for the Helmicks, this brush with death was all too real.
Tell me about that incident. What happened that day with the car?
Well, Alan and Miriam had driven to Delta for the closing on their business. They were selling Alan's title company to a purchaser, and they had finished the transaction and had parked out front.
Collected a check?
And collected a check for over $100,000 for the sale of this business, and got in the car.
At that point, Miriam went in to use the restroom.
And while she's in the business, the car starts smoking.
Alan looked in the mirror and saw that the vehicle was on fire. He got out of the vehicle, went to the back of the car, and a wick was in the gas tank.
When Miriam comes out, she hears that Alan's screaming at her to bring her to get a fire extinguisher, that the car is on fire.
Upon arrival, we found a vehicle that had a wick in its gas tank and had been set on fire.
You ever seen anything like that before?
No, I had not seen anything like that.
It was pretty obvious someone had tried to start that fire.
Correct.
So if someone was trying to set the car on fire, it didn't quite work.
Correct. The fumes did not ignite, fortunately.
Were they able to glean anything else from the crime scene?
No security cameras from the surrounding businesses, no video footage whatsoever of what had transpired.
The police both questioned Miriam and Alan after the car incident.
You have no idea who would do this to you or Alan?
No, not at all. I mean, it's just weird. I don't know. We've been hashing it over last night. We can't figure it out.
Alan didn't have a lot of enemies, and so who would want to kill Alan in that kind of way by blowing up his car? That was a real mystery.
Do you know anyone that would have a problem with you?
I do not. Over the years, as active as I was in business in this area, there's going to be some unhappy people because I turn people down on loans from time to time. But I think I was well respected in the savings and loan industry. There are two people that have had a problem with me.
Okay, who are those two people?
Alan mentions two bankers with whom he had prior dealings, but quickly downplays their potential involvement in the arson.
I can't imagine them being vindictive because they're too much exposed.
Right.
They did stupid things, but they're not stupid people.
Investigators will ultimately determine that those bankers are not involved, but they're exploring every avenue, even asking Alan if he thinks it's possible Miriam could have been responsible for the car fire.
Oh, God. No, I don't think that.
Not at all.
That would be terrible. No, why would you do that?
So during the interviews with officers, Alan and Miriam had mentioned that Miriam would not hurt Alan or harm him because Alan was worth more to her alive than if he were dead.
What would she gain if you died yesterday?
What he would get is a mess. She gets nothing that was created prior to the marriage.
Alan was convinced that it wasn't Miriam, and if the investigators in Delta had any suspicions of Miriam being involved in this, Alan was the first to defend her and say she wouldn't do this.
And besides, what reason would Miriam have for trying to kill Alan? He'd always gone out of his way to make her dreams come true with lavish gifts and gestures.
His goal in life was to make me happy, and he took care of me. His favorite saying was, have fun like hell. So anytime he knew I was going shopping or he gave me money or anything like that, he would say, have fun like hell.
Alan loved Miriam, and he was always happy to dote on her, buying her lavish gifts like her own dance studio and even a horse training business, always intent on making her lifelong dreams a reality.
I met Alan and Miriam Helmick at my farm because they wanted to buy some horses to start a horse breeding operation. It was always her passion to start riding, and Alan was just said, I'm going to give this dream to you.
Horse training centers, it's extremely difficult way to make a living. Most of those never pay off. It's a labor of love.
You told him it was not a good idea to invest in this horse.
No, and I said, it's a good hobby, but it's too expensive.
And his desire to open up that dance studio came from where?
Oh, it had to be Miriam.
You had your concerns about him investing in these things.
Oh, I told him, I said, hey, get your head up your ass.
Sounds like he really wanted to make Miriam happy.
I think so.
Alan was always very good with his finances, but with the horse business and the dance business, they were hemorrhaging money.
As investigators began digging into Alan's finances, they found that bad business decisions had left him in a serious financial hole. But were his money troubles enough of a reason for someone to want him dead? Or could the murder have been more personal?
Does Alan Jr. know where you guys live now?
Yes, he's been there.
He's my wayward kid because he's sort of a bum.
Investigators will soon learn about some long-standing Helmick family tension.
He said he shows up when he's not announced, you call the cops.
One week after his untimely death, Alan Helmick is laid to rest.
When we were at Alan's funeral, Miriam sat in a pew in the very front, of course. She was crying, looked real despondent. Alan's family, his daughters, were just heartbroken and devastated. Alan was a really good dad to those kids. He was like their rock, and hit them real hard.
What's it like around here without him, I guess?
Very quiet. I'm missing my right arm. I feel like I'm just missing my life. I don't know what to do.
In the days after Alan Helmick's murder, investigators had diligently chased down leads and conducted interviews with people in his orbit, but they hadn't announced any suspects. There was, however, one thing they were pretty sure of. This was not a robbery gone wrong. What stood out to you?
It was odd. You had property still in the house that was, you could assume, was of value that a normal burglar would take.
Like what?
Computers, phones, jewelry. The normal type of stuff you would expect somebody to steal.
There were drawers pulled out evenly. There was a trash can knocked over. There were drawers that were open that wouldn't hold valuables anyway.
And most of the drawers were open in the kitchen, right?
Correct. In the kitchen, throughout the house. It just did not sit right. It did not feel right. It was looking staged.
And Alan's autopsy confirmed that he probably had not walked in on anyone committing a burglary.
There was no indication that Alan had tried to fight off his attacker. It was very clear that he was caught by surprise as he was shot right in the back of the head.
Do you think Alan knew his attacker?
I don't know.
But there was someone in Alan's life that Miriam had told investigators he'd been wary of. At one point, Miriam starts pointing fingers at Alan's son, Alan Jr. What did she say about him?
Miriam talked about how Alan and Alan Jr. never got along, and that there was some falling out between the two of them and some animosity.
Tell me more about Alan Jr.
He's had run-ins with the law.
What was the relationship between Alan and Alan Jr. 3 to 4 months ago?
Same.
Same
It's
distance?
been that way for many years.
Okay, kind of
Very
stay apart.
distant.
Okay.
There's some real animosity there.
Does Alan Jr. know where you guys live now?
Yes, he's been there.
And after that car fire 6 weeks earlier, Alan had also mentioned his strained relationship with his son to those investigators.
He's my wayward kid because he's sort of a bum. And you can't fix that by just handing him money.
Alan's personal issues with his son, coupled with the fact that he may have known his attacker, was enough for detectives to bring Alan Jr. in for an interview.
Come on in and have a seat. And I,
Right here?
yes, that's fine.
He's the kind of guy that if he saw something that wasn't right, he would give you his 2 cents about it, and it would not be nice. It would be sharp.
He just told it as it is.
Yeah, it's sharp. Yeah, right out.
Sure.
I go, that's like, you're out, you know, you're
right.
You're I like you because you're doing this.
Alan Jr. goes on to say that his father had effectively cut him off financially.
Your dad would give me a dime.
Okay. Did you ask?
No, I'm sure that I had back then, and they repeated, you know, hey, this is something you need to learn. to take care of yourself.
When asked, Alan Jr. insists he would never hurt his father, and he had an alibi. He was working out of state at the time of the murder.
Where were you Tuesday? Because everybody's been asked that question. And
you know, I'm not an ignorant human being.
Right.
And I would be offended if you didn't ask those questions. In fact, I would be angry with you if you didn't ask them in that way. Would have been working on the computers. I would have been at the hostel on my computer.
In Seattle.
Alan Jr. was cleared as a suspect.
That's right. No evidence linking Alan Jr. to having anything to do with Alan's murder.
So investigators are back to square one.
That's right.
There were no suspects. We didn't know if this person could come back.
I never thought it would happen here or anything like that would ever happen here. Because it's always quiet around here.
Are you scared that this person might come back?
I don't know. Yes and no. I don't want to leave because I'm closer to him here.
Had there been a murder in my home, would not want to stay there, especially not a few days after. But she said it was her home. She said she felt closer to him there.
But if Miriam says she felt safe enough to stay in her and Alan's home, that was about to change.
And then 2 weeks after Alan's murder, Miriam finds a dramatic discovery under her doormat at the house.
And she goes, what should I do? What should I do? And I said, you get off the phone and you call the police and you get away from there.
Was the killer now coming after Miriam?
Miriam Helmick came home last Tuesday to find her husband Alan shot and killed. Her quiet Whitewater neighborhood was turned upside down.
The baffling murder of businessman Alan Helmick had left a community desperate for answers. Detectives were taking a close look at everyone in Alan's life, even close friends like Ed Benson, who was brought in for an interview.
I've known Alan, I don't know, a long time.
So you're good friends, I could.
Well,
is it safe to say you're good friends, or
we're friends? I mean,
okay.
We're not. We're good friends.
So.
Strange interviews with the sheriff's department, the investigator. You know, you go in and we're friends, but yet we were treated as like suspects.
Did you guys ever have any bad blood between you two or anything like that?
Not from my standpoint. Not at all. No.
Any enemies that you know of without Alan telling you, or any? Said rumors that, Alan's not a good guy or anything like that?
Never.
Okay.
Never.
And there was that mysterious car fire just weeks earlier. Everyone wondering, could the two incidents be linked?
Take it all that they may be connected?
A good possibility. I was letting them figure that out. It was, it was a shock to us. But he never mentioned anything about anybody that would do something like that.
As days passed with no suspects in custody, Miriam became convinced she was being watched. She reported seeing a white pickup truck with a driver she didn't recognize circling the property, leaving her to wonder whether the same people who killed Alan were now coming after her.
I talked to Miriam almost on a daily basis, and in a lot of our conversations, she talked about that she thought somebody was trying to come into the house and she was scared for her life.
Miriam starts reporting that weird things have been happening around the house. She's saying that she will come home and a door that she knows she locked is unlocked.
She was finding lights on. She was finding medicine cabinet doors open that shouldn't be.
She saw one or more suspicious vehicles that she didn't know who was linked to them. And mind you, this is a very small area, only a handful of homes out there. And you recognize most of the vehicles that are driving in and out of the area.
But the strange happenings at the home weren't the only thing worrying Miriam. With Alan, the sole breadwinner, gone, there wasn't any money coming in. During her police interview, Miriam had explained to investigators that they had a prenup.
She really didn't have anything without him. She didn't stand to gain a lot.
I did not have any legal claim to anything that he owned.
Okay.
It was pretty cut and dry.
Miriam's financial situation was fairly dire. In fact, she started selling off some of the property they had together.
She said she had no money, all the money was in Alan's name. So I said, well, let me buy the horses back, I'll pay your debt off to the other trainer. That way it'll give you some money for what you need to live on.
And then, as Miriam is struggling to stay financially afloat, an ominous message shows up on her doorstep.
She was with her friend Penny. They had just gotten back from shopping. She goes up to her front door and she sees an envelope sticking out from under the mat. And when she opens that envelope, there's a card inside that says, "Alan's first, you're next. Run, run, run."
She collapses to the ground, becomes very distraught.
Marion calls me and she's frantic. And she goes, what should I do? And I said, well, you need to hang up the phone and call the police and get out of there. I said, because somebody could be there trying to hurt you.
The greeting card is turned over by Miriam to her lawyer, who then notifies the police.
I was given a copy of the card. It said, "To the grieving widow," in block letters. On the front is a picture of a middle-aged female. And it said, "Insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result." And then inside, Alan spelled A-L-L-E-N.
Misspelled.
Misspelled. Your was also Y-O-U-R. A grammatical thing, okay.
Whoever left it there had cut out the barcode, seemingly in an effort to obfuscate anybody tracing that card, where it was purchased, who purchased it, that sort of thing.
It looks like Miriam might be the next target.
Maybe there is somebody out there who really wants to kill Miriam as well.
After Miriam received the threatening card, she left and she went back to Florida, Jacksonville, Florida, where she's from. She moved in with her son, Chris.
How was she coping?
Oh, it was not good. You know, there was some brokenness there. I just knew that she was in a bad place. I was trying to help her through that stuff.
What did you make of that?
I think that's not that abnormal. She didn't have a lot to her name, so she needed to figure out how to live without Alan.
Back in Colorado, that bizarre greeting card gives police something they have been desperately searching for: a solid lead.
I had actually seen this card before.
Just coincidentally, you had seen the card?
It's kind of a unique front on a card.
It's at this city market that investigators finally get the break they've been waiting for. The person who bought that card with the threatening message from Miriam is caught on surveillance tape here. And just who that person is will take everyone by surprise.
You see it clear as day.
Then a bombshell discovery from decades earlier.
The piece of evidence that was really the smoking gun, almost literally, was recovered from that lawn in Delta.
What investigators find buried here will crack this case wide open.
What we had was a man who had led a good life and he ended up murdered.
I saw Alan on the floor. He was cold and gray.
People were in disbelief. People were scared.
I held his hand for a few minutes and tried to make some sense of it all.
Miriam comes home. There's a handwritten note, and it says, "To the grieving widow."
Alan's first, you're next. Run, run, run.
It looks like Miriam might be the next target.
The killer was now after her.
You want twists and turns? There's no shortage of that here.
I met Miriam on a dating site. She wrote, saw your profile and loved it.
She was moving on.
Even my girls were like, she's dating already?
She's trying to get on with her life in a new state. But another incident with a gun comes to the surface.
I heard the shot. Mom kind of runs out the door and she's hysterical, just screaming. Like a scream I've never heard before in my entire life.
Could what they find buried in this yard be the smoking gun?
On June 10, 2008, 62-year-old respected businessman Alan Helmick was found dead in his home by his wife Miriam.
When we arrived, Alan was on the floor in the kitchen. He had been shot in the head and we had a bullet casing next to his body.
The place had been ransacked, but nothing seemed to have been taken.
They realized fairly quickly that this was a staged attempt to hide what really happened.
A tragic ending to what appeared to be a perfect second chance at love.
Both Alan and Miriam were widows. She was his dance instructor for ballroom dancing lessons.
I'm missing my right arm. I feel like I'm just missing my life. I don't know what to do.
Miriam told police she'd been running errands all morning and provided receipts to back up her alibi.
I went to Walmart. Okay. I needed to buy some shirts.
Police were at a loss as to who would want this well-liked businessman dead.
Alan had some enemies, but nobody was going to kill him.
And as investigators began to dig deeper, the story took a frightening turn.
Miriam comes home. There's a handwritten note, and it says, "To the grieving widow. Alan was first, you're next. Run, run, run."
It looks like Miriam might be the next target.
The real killer was now after her.
After Miriam received the threatening card, she went back to Florida, where she's from.
When Miriam came back to Florida, I was so surprised. I just couldn't believe it. She gave me a call, and you know, I got a lot to tell you, she says.
In Florida, Miriam turned to old friends for support, reconnecting with her former neighbor, Aline Lee.
Miriam didn't have any money. She said, "All I've got is just the clothes on my back. I have nothing." I said, "I can get you clothes. My girls are your size." I bought a gas card for her, and I gave her a bag of jewelry. I just felt bad for her.
While Miriam tries to restart her life in Florida, detectives in Colorado are continuing to work the case, trying to figure out where that threatening card she received came from.
They got in touch with the manufacturer of the card. He was able to tell them where these cards were sold.
I checked the Hallmark, I checked the Hobby Lobby. We finally get to the city markets. I contacted their loss prevention guy. They found 2 sales. One person paid in cash, didn't know who that person was. The other one was with a credit card. So we had a name, and then he found one more purchase. He called me and he's like, "I've got video."
That store uses VHS tapes?
That particular store was not as up-to-date as their others, and they did use VHS, and they used it over and over and over again. So by the time we got this tape, it was kind of delicate. It was her. She was wearing the same style of shirt that she had walked in with her interview. It was just a different color combination.
You see Miriam going first to the area where the cards are sold within the city market, and then to the cash register where she pays for it. Clear as day.
So now it appears that Miriam, the grieving widow, seemingly afraid for her own life, had actually sent that threatening card to herself. But when investigators confront her about this, she says she has an explanation.
What Miriam told them is that she felt like the police weren't paying enough attention to the case. They weren't doing much. And so she wanted to kind of jog that with this card.
That was probably not the best decision to be made. Not what I kind of would have done in the situation.
She felt she needed to do this.
She felt she needed to.
Did that greeting card incident change the way you and investigators approached the case?
What innocent person would do this? Obfuscate, complicate a murder investigation with this ruse?
But remember, when she was interviewed by investigators, Miriam said she had very little to gain from Alan's death.
We did a prenup. So everything his is his. Everything mine is mine. He has more than I do. Okay.
With no clear motive in sight, the Mesa County Sheriff's Office turned their attention to Miriam's past, learning about that double tragedy she and her family suffered years earlier in Florida.
There was the sudden loss of her daughter, and then a shocking development with her first husband.
While Miriam and her first husband, Jack, were in bed, Jack shot himself in the head. Now you say, okay, she's had not one, but two husbands shot in the head.
Was there a common thread?
And they were both married to Miriam Helmick.
Police ruled it a suicide. There were some strange circumstances, though. Things like he used his right hand to pull the trigger. Jack was a lefty.
Investigators then start looking back at your father's death.
Yes. I woke up to the gunshot.
You were just down the hall.
I was sleeping on the couch in the family room, and I heard the shot. Mom kind of runs out the door, and she's hysterical, just screaming. Like a scream I've never heard before in my entire life. There's certain things in life that can't be faked.
Did you question her?
No. I know one of the things came up is that my dad was left-handed. Well, my dad learned how to write left-handed because he had a cast on his arm when he was younger, so he was ambidextrous. He could use his right hand too.
And you had seen him depressed before this?
Yeah.
Was the death of her first husband, that case, ever reopened?
No, it was ruled a suicide.
But with clouds of suspicion gathering over Miriam about the death of her second husband, she does something unexpected.
I met Miriam on a dating site.
A millionaire match?
Millionaire match.
Your profile described me to a T.
Investigators are starting to wonder if they could actually have a black widow on their hand.
I mean, she was finding the husband, she was looking for the money, and then moving on.
With suspicion now mounting that she may be the person who killed her husband, Alan, Miriam Helmick does something unexpected. She goes looking for love again.
Miriam took me to this website for dating men that had a lot of money. I mean, we're talking about very rich. And she picked out this one guy from Orlando. Had a lot in common with her. He liked to dance, and he loved horses, all this stuff.
I met Miriam on a dating site. I owned a dance studio for about 6 or 7 years, and then I had a human resources company for about 20 years. I did very well for myself. Miriam had contacted me first. She wrote, "Saw your profile and loved it. I can dance, any dance, and I'm pretty good at it. Your profile requirement described me complete to a T."
She says, "I'm gonna go down there." I said, "What?" I mean, this is just months after Alan had died. Even my girls were like, "She's dating already?" And I said, "Yeah."
We met at TGI Fridays. She was very talkative, very nice. We hit it off really good, actually.
Miriam even opens up about the recent loss of her husband.
Miriam had told me that her husband had died of some brain disease. She said that we both felt he was going to die soon anyway, and there was no big deal. We were just waiting for the time. She handled his death very well. I just thought to myself, okay, well, big deal.
Miriam may have been trying to move on and put Alan's death behind her, but back in Colorado, investigators are taking a closer look at her, starting with her alibi from the day of Alan's murder.
I went to Orchard Mesa Market. I went to Walmart. I think I have all the receipts in my pocket.
She was able to pull out the receipts from her pocket of everywhere she had been that morning. Just didn't seem natural to us.
To show up at the police interview with a pocket full of receipts, suspicious or just thorough?
I would say very odd. That is not a normal thing.
Is that really your first thought, to explain where you had gone in great detail and keeping the receipts?
What did investigators make of her alibi?
Well, they thought it was suspicious, didn't make a lot of sense to them.
And investigators weren't the only ones with suspicions about Miriam.
Miriam, Helmick, Helmick.
Remember that local reporter who sat down with her after Alan's murder? She couldn't shake the feeling that something was off with her story.
Do you have you planned the funeral yet?
It's tomorrow at 10.
I start to get a weird feeling as she's talking.
I wanted to get back into dressage and decided I should have a dressage horse, so he bought several.
It was all about her. And these interviews are really supposed to be about the deceased.
His goal in life was to make me happy. He never wanted me to worry about anything or have any problems or anything, and he took care of me, everything.
As I was speaking with her, it went from feeling really bad for her to being suspicious.
Are you scared that this person might come back?
That was it.
Yes
That's
and no.
the look.
I don't want to leave because I'm closer to him here.
She started looking to the side. It's just like when you're talking to somebody and you know that they're lying because of nonverbal cues that they have. When I left that house, I've never scurried away from a place so quickly in my life. I was genuinely scared.
And while Miriam is talking to the media, investigators are talking to those closest to Alan. You continue with the investigation. Actually, you interview Alan's children.
Yes. Right after Alan passed, we were speaking to the daughters, and they had expressed concerns of an inability to get a hold of their dad.
He's been completely out of character, drastically since January. It's odd for my dad.
You've seen him change. You've seen him change his character.
And maybe not so much see him change his character, but through her, I can't even get to him.
He wasn't answering phone calls. He wasn't returning voicemails.
Hi, Dad. It's Portia. I hate to bother you so much. Just I haven't been able to talk to you, so things are piling up.
Hey, Miriam. This is Christy. I've been calling my dad for about a week, and I'm not hearing back.
And every time I called, Miriam answered. Before then.
His phone?
Yeah.
Okay.
His cell phone. Which I thought was weird. He always answered his phone.
It appeared that he was being distanced from them.
I'm like, well, Dad, is your home phone hooked up? He's like, no. I'm like, well, how does anybody get a hold of you? Well, Miriam doesn't want anybody to bother me.
And when they would call Miriam, there was excuses as to, oh, I'll have him call you back, or he's not around.
She certainly, in the days leading up to his murder, was isolating him from his children.
Alan's kids couldn't help but wonder why Miriam seemed to be keeping them from their father in the months leading up to his murder. Could it have been something to do with a sudden decline in his health?
Father's never sick. My father's like an ox.
Mm-hmm.
And he was, every time I would talk to him, he was sick.
And did he say what he was sick from?
He didn't know. I don't think he had a clue.
But he said he couldn't even stand up. He was so dizzy.
The more investigators dig, the more troubling details they uncover, like a gun that seemed to have disappeared from Miriam and Alan's home.
One of Alan's children said she specifically remembered seeing a .25 caliber pistol in his sock drawer.
They couldn't find that gun after the murder.
Police learn of a shooting incident that had happened outside this house decades before.
Could what they find buried in this yard be the break they need? Detectives will often say that when it comes to investigating, there are no coincidences. And for those working the murder of Alan Helmick, they were certain that attempted car fire just weeks earlier was somehow connected to their case.
This area is where I was dispatched to a car fire. We saw that somebody had placed a wick in the gas tank of a vehicle. We contacted the driver. We were speaking with him. We were speaking with his wife. As I started questioning both of them, I noticed she became a bit nervous, and she said that she wasn't feeling well, needed to run to the restroom. I watched her leave the back of the vehicle, not go into the restroom she just came out of.
Not right here.
Not right here where she just went to the restroom. She actually went across 4 lanes of traffic, which...
That's strange.
Very strange.
Did she ever come back?
Not while I was on scene.
She stayed over there?
She stayed over there.
When you were still here, you went into the ladies' room.
We did.
What did you find there?
We smelled the odor of gasoline. It was fairly strong.
Since investigators learned that Miriam had been standing at the trunk right before Alan discovered the fire, they decided to bluff him, telling Alan there was surveillance video of the incident to see if he thought his wife could have been responsible.
I watched the video.
Is she on there?
I'm asking you. What do you think?
No, is she on there?
I'm
Did she
asking
lie?
you what you think.
No, but I could be wrong.
We bluffed Alan, and he said he didn't believe it.
And you didn't answer my question. You looked at the video.
No.
Nice little twig there. If you'd seen her on the video doing it, I would have been shocked.
The crime scene reminded investigators of a movie scene.
After all the dust had settled, our investigators started thinking about what had transpired in Delta. They thought, this sounds like the car explosion scene in No Country for Old Men, which had just come out in the last year, and it was a popular movie where the villain had created a distraction by lighting a magazine, sticking it into the gas inlet, and exploding the car.
As police are looking into this, they discovered that the Helmicks had rented that movie about 4 days prior to the incident.
Was this the smoking gun or smoking car?
It definitely was part of the investigation. Miriam was not charged with the arson in Delta because of the roadblock put up when Alan demanded the investigation be closed. He did not want to pursue it if we were looking at Miriam, and that he would not cooperate with the investigation.
And the detectives now investigating Alan's murder are still searching for any hard evidence that Miriam pulled the trigger. After all, they still hadn't recovered a murder weapon.
There was the issue of the firearm that was missing from the home. And in talking to the daughters, we knew that there should have been a .25 caliber Lorson in the house.
Because people had seen that gun there before.
Correct.
As luck would have it, there was an old Helmick family story from decades earlier of Alan's first wife's stepfather firing that same gun into the ground during a domestic dispute back in 1989. Could this gun, now missing, be the murder weapon?
There was some evidence that it had been in the house in the years leading up to the murder, and no evidence of what he would have done with that weapon. No evidence he sold it, gave it away, traded it. You know, where is this gun?
And then investigators bring in a metal detector into the case.
Right.
Detectives come up with a long-shot idea. Go back to the property where that domestic dispute happened back in 1989. Could they recover the bullet fired from that gun and compare it to the bullet that killed Alan?
I received a phone call from the chief investigator at the Sheriff's Department of Mesa County asking me if I would assist them in searching for a bullet.
Carol Quarles is a retired law enforcement officer who has experience using a metal detector to search for missing evidence.
So your reaction when they asked you to get involved in this case?
Oh, yeah, heck yeah. Anytime, just call me. I love finding evidence.
And you started over here?
And I started working my way around. And then I just slowly worked my way around to about midway in the yard. And I hadn't found anything.
And they were getting nervous. The investigator said, well, maybe you're not going to find it.
Yeah, maybe the witness wasn't remembering things right.
Right. To which you said,
let me check over there in case the shooter shot into that corner of the yard. And so I walked over there, and it wasn't 30 to 45 seconds, and I had the bullet.
Where did you find that bullet?
That bullet was right in this area right here. It was an aha moment. I mean, it was euphoric. That's the best way that I can explain it.
And they dug up that bullet that had been there since 1989. They were able to compare that bullet from the ground to the bullet that was recovered from Alan's headshot. And what we were able to determine was that the two bullets were consistent with each other.
The evidence is building up against her.
It is.
At this point, police believe that they have enough to arrest Miriam for Alan's murder.
But this is a woman who police believe orchestrated an attempted firebombing and shot her husband in the head in cold blood. Is she just going to go quietly?
She's being investigated for a homicide. You don't ever know that she doesn't have a gun. If she sees you and she's scared, knows what's going on, it's a real game out there at that point.
In the fall of 2008, just a few months after Alan Helmick's murder, Miriam was living in Jacksonville, Florida, attempting to move on with her life. But her past in Colorado was about to catch up with her.
I was a special agent with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement here in the Jacksonville field office. I got a call from Mesa County Sheriff's detectives, and they were investigating a homicide in Colorado.
Did you have an inkling that she might be a suspect?
It wasn't kind of until I was driving home one day and the Grand Junction police called me and said, is she living? I was like, yeah, she's with me. I don't know what's going on, but she's there.
And we sent two investigators down there with an arrest warrant.
They handcuffed her and set her right on the ground. She had a blank expression on her face, like a little bit angry looking almost.
6 months after Alan's death, Miriam is charged with first-degree murder, attempted murder for that car fire, and forgery. She pleads not guilty and is extradited from Florida back to Colorado.
What we had was a man who had led a good life and he ended up murdered, and there's a need to bring to justice the right person.
A year after being arrested and charged, Miriam Helmick goes on trial here at the Mesa County Courthouse. Prosecutors argue that the grieving widow is actually a cold-blooded killer.
Miriam Helmick standing trial for the murder of her husband was a huge deal. The courtroom was pretty packed. It was a bit chilling. Miriam did not show a lot of emotion. She didn't look like herself.
So why do prosecutors believe Miriam killed Alan? They argue the motive was as age-old as they come. Money. Financial motive was the critical part of your argument.
There were suspicious bank account activity where it appeared that Miriam had forged multiple checks from Alan's account. All told, she had taken about $40,000 out of his account through writing those checks.
But the defense pushed back, saying that Miriam had Alan's permission to write those checks, both as his wife and his secretary.
Banks had been calling, trying to get a hold of Alan.
He wasn't being available to his banker, something that had never happened before.
Now there was an urgency.
Right. In fact, the banker had reached out to one of Alan's daughters, and that was tension that was building.
Prosecutors put Alan's daughter, Portia, on the stand to testify about the way Miriam seemed to be isolating her father in the months leading up to his murder.
He was much less involved in my life. He was much more distant. I called him, and when I didn't get to his phone, I called Miriam's phone.
And when they would call Miriam, there was excuses as to, oh, I'll have him call you back, or he's not around.
If Alan was discovering that she had been taking money from him without permission, that was a possible motive.
How would he have reacted if he had found it?
Everything would have been over. You had had our attorney on a hotline, and it would have been over.
And prosecutors argued that Miriam had tried to kill Alan not once, but twice. The first time in that failed attempt at blowing up his car. They called Miriam's horse breeder and friend, Jerry Yarborough, to the stand.
When I went on the stand, I was super scared because I knew my testimony was going to be not so good for Miriam.
Jerry told jurors about a conversation she said she had with Miriam after that failed car bombing.
She had said that she found out that a car won't explode if it has a full tank of gas.
And when she said that, what was her demeanor?
She laughed.
That catch you off guard?
Pretty much.
But the defense pointed out that if Miriam was after Alan's money, why would she try to blow up his car while he was holding that large cashier's check he had just received?
The piece of evidence that was really the smoking gun, almost literally, was the bullet that was able to be recovered from that lawn in Delta.
How pivotal was that in tying Miriam to the crime?
That was a nice piece of evidence because we didn't actually find the gun, but we had a story about the gun, how it was seen in the home. Now we have a bullet that roughly matches the bullet that was recovered from Alan.
But as Miriam's defense pointed out, roughly matched is not the same as a perfect match.
Couldn't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt.
Then the defense did something you don't often see at a murder trial.
The defense calls Miriam Helmick to the stand.
They called Miriam to testify in her own defense.
Once you got inside, what did you see?
I saw Alan on the floor. I dropped my bags and went to him. He was cold and gray. I held his hand for a few minutes and tried to make some sense of it all.
Miriam stayed on that stand for 2 days, denying that she had anything to do with Alan's murder. When prosecutors got their chance to cross-examine her, they pressed her on the infamous run, run, run card that she admitted sending to herself.
You were just acting at that time, weren't you?
Yes, just briefly.
You concocted a complete ruse to lead them on a wild goose chase away from you and towards some phantom killer out there, correct?
If they'd actually had contacted me or listened, then maybe I wouldn't have been at that point.
That was probably not the best decision to be made, but I think at that point she was probably broken, just emotionally and mentally broken.
That video really did undermine Miriam's credibility.
Showing her purchasing that card was very difficult for the defense to rebut.
After 16 days of testimony, the jury gets the case.
They come back with a verdict in 5 hours for a first-degree murder case. You just don't see that.
5 hours was very fast.
The verdict, guilty
on all counts.
There was a little bit of a sigh of relief.
Well, you thought, good, she's going to get what she has coming.
She was sentenced to life without parole. I think that spoke volumes to all of the evidence, circumstantial or not, that was stacked up against her.
But Miriam says the jury got it wrong, and she had a lot more to say when we spoke in her first interview since being convicted. Miriam, are you telling me that your husband Alan started the car fire himself? Why would he do that? It's now been 15 years since Miriam Helmick was sentenced to life for killing her husband, Alan. Since then, she's been at the Denver Women's Correctional Facility, where she recently called me from.
An incarcerated individual at Denver Women's Correctional Facility.
Hello, Miriam.
Hi.
How are you doing over there?
Good, good.
This is the first time she's spoken publicly since her 2009 sentencing. I asked Miriam about first meeting Alan back when she was his dance instructor in Grand Junction.
And was it love at first sight?
Well, not really, no, because I was there trying to work, and but he just never gave up. Let's just put it that way.
He was very persistent.
Yes, very.
And eventually you fell in love with him.
Yes. It was kind of hard not to. I mean, he's a very, very kind, very sweet man, and he always had your best interest at heart, usually.
Alan's kids say that you were isolating him from them in the months prior to his death. Was that true?
No. But he would get really pale during the day, and I would make him rest. And so I would take his phone away where he wouldn't ring so that he could get some rest. Because it seemed like they always called when he was trying to get a nap.
Next message. Hey, this is Portia. I'm starting to get a complex here because you guys have never not picked up your phone.
Our pathologist, Dr. Kurtzman, indicated there was evidence of advanced heart disease. So if he was not feeling well, it was probably attributable to the heart disease.
Prosecutors say that you fraudulently had written about $40,000 in checks on Alan's money that he was about to find out, and that's why you killed him.
He could look up online anytime and see what was coming out of his bank account. Nobody stopped him from doing that. So anything that was written with his approval.
Did you steal any money from Alan?
No, I didn't take anything from him because everything that was put into the bank went into his bank account. None of it came to me.
Did you have anything to do with starting that car fire?
No, I didn't have any inclination to do it. But I almost believe that he started his own car fire.
You mean to tell me that Alan started the car fire himself? Why would he try to do that and possibly hurt himself?
Well, I don't think he thought about hurting himself. And it took me a while to wrap my head around that he would possibly do anything like that.
Miriam says Alan may have tried to set the car fire for the insurance money.
I started to wonder if he did, because as soon as he got his car home, he applied for the insurance on it.
It's a claim that's hard to back up, but Alan was adamant with authorities that he did not believe Miriam would ever try to kill him.
I had called Alan to advise him that I felt his current wife, Miriam, was trying to kill him. And Alan got upset with me and told me that Miriam would never do that to him. And at that point, he asked me to terminate the case.
What about the gun that was missing from your home and Alan's home?
I didn't know it was missing until this whole thing, so I have no idea how or where it went.
It had an unusual family history, that gun.
I know when I first met him, 2 years before that, I saw it when we were moving, and I asked him to put it away because I don't like handguns. I just don't. I already had to deal with that kind of thing. It was very unnerving to me. That was the last time I saw it.
Now, authorities also questioned your alibi, all the receipts that you had that looked like you were trying so hard to create an alibi. Were you?
It's not uncommon for anybody to pocket their receipts. I had cash and receipts, so they went in my pocket. I've done that all my life.
It makes sense to us that she shot him before she ran the errands. Then she runs all the errands, and she creates an alibi for herself on purpose, intending to throw people off.
Miriam, did you kill your husband, Alan?
I did not.
Do you think you'll get out of prison someday?
I do, eventually, because I know that I'm going to keep digging, and I know that we're going to be able to put this together.
What do you think will prove your innocence now?
The fact that I had no GSR on me, I had no blood spray on me.
Wouldn't the blood spatter and the gunshot residue be easily washed off if you took a shower?
Well, you know, that's funny because when I went to the police station that afternoon, you could tell I hadn't taken a shower. There was even some dirt under my fingernails, pretty much from doing the barn that morning and helping him shovel out stalls.
So you had not washed anything off?
No, I hadn't changed clothes, nothing.
Miriam has filed numerous appeals with the courts. They've all been rejected, but she vows to keep on fighting.
It won't be over for anybody till it's over for me, and I do have hope. I know that I didn't kill him. Now that I'm on this path, I'm not going to lay down and die with it. I'm sorry, it's just not in my nature to do that.
How often do you think about him?
I think about him all the time. He was funny. He would say things that I remember. His biggest thing was, "It's only business. Treat it that way." You know, he was fun to be around.
After the trial, did you see your mom again?
I did not. I have not seen her since the trial.
After so long, what did Miriam finally have to say to her son?
Don't forget, you're going to put on your jacket, too. We're not used to the 30-degree weather that's awaiting us.
No, we're from Florida.
Maybe different.
This past November, Chris Giles and his wife Kelly flew to Colorado for a much-anticipated visit to see his mom, Miriam, in prison.
So she's in the Dimmons Women's Correctional Facility. So it'll be the first time in probably about 15 years that I've seen her. I have not seen her since the trial.
Why not?
I think for one, I didn't want to have to just see her that way. See her kind of broken and see her in that situation. I was also kind of mad. I was mad that all this had kind of happened.
Over the years, one by one, Chris lost his entire family to different forms of tragedy.
It's just kind of a whirlwind, and then all of a sudden this happens.
That new husband dies, and then she's arrested.
Yeah. You're trying to figure out how to deal with those things, and you kind of got to deal with the pain, you got to deal with the hurt. Let's rock and roll. It's probably nervous like me, you know, a little bit nervous, a little excited.
Our cameras were not allowed inside the prison, but Chris tells me that reuniting with his mom, while complicated, was also healing for him.
First thing she did was apologize.
What did she say?
As soon as we sat down. She said, "I'm sorry for everything I put you through." She said, "I'm sorry that we had to go through this." But still, once we got to the Alan part, she was firm in that she was innocent of all that stuff. And so we just hashed out kind of what had happened.
Do you believe your mother had anything to do with Alan's murder?
I do not.
With your father?
I do not, no.
Seeing your mom was a big step for you after all
Yes.
these years.
Forgiveness is a big thing, you know. It's huge when you can work through that and go, I don't have to forget about it, but I can choose to forgive you for it.
But when it comes to Alan's family and friends, there are some things that they say they would rather forget.
I try not to think about the murder. I more like to think about the fun times that we had with Alan. Those are good memories.
What do you think Alan would have wanted people to remember about him?
He was a lot of fun. This kind of guy you could, meet and have a drink with and have a good laugh.
He treated everybody with fairness and respect and gave a lot of love to those around him. Nobody wanted to hurt him except for his own wife. She ended up taking this man's life.
Oh, I mean, a good man was killed. I don't know whether justice is served or not. She's in jail.
Commas, Utah, to find Eric lying on the floor of the master bedroom, despite the immediate initiation of cardiopulmonary resuscitation and the utilization of automated compression devices. Eric was pronounced dead at the scene. The initial observations made by first responders raised immediate questions. A. Significant amount of biological fluid was present, which led one of the on. Seen emergency technicians to hypothesize that Eric may have suffered in internal hemorrhage or a ruptured brain aneurysm. Corey, visibly distraught, informed officers that she and Eric had been celebrating a successful business transaction earlier that evening. She explained that she had prepared a mixed drink for him to mark the occasion, after which she had gone to sleep in her son's bedroom to comfort the child during a night terror. Upon returning to her own bedroom hours later, she claimed she found her husband unresponsive. When questioned about his medical history, Corey and her mother, Lisa, suggested several possibilities, including chronic complications from Lyme disease, weekly allergy treatments, or a potential adverse reaction to a sleep aid, or A. tetrahydrocannabinol gummy. To those who knew Eric, however, the idea of a sudden health failure was difficult to reconcile. He was an athletic, energetic outdoorsman who actively coached his son's soccer teams and operated a highly successful stone masonry business. The county coroner's office proceeded with a forensic autopsy, a standard legal requirement for any unexpected death of a young, healthy individual. The results of the toxicology analysis were stunning. The cause of death was determined to be acute drug intoxication, specifically from an exceptional concentration of illicitly manufactured fentanyl. The amount of the substance in Eric's system was estimated to be 5 times the lethal threshold for an average adult. Importantly, the toxicology report indicated that the drug was not a medical grade, meaning it had not been administered via a standard pharmaceutical patch or prescription. It was illicit street fentanyl, a substance Eric was not known to use. This revelation transformed a tragic medical emergency into a full-scale homicide investigation. As detectives began to probe deeper into the life of the Richens family, they uncovered significant fractures in the couple's relationship that contrasted sharply with their public image. Eric's family immediately voiced their suspicions to law enforcement, revealing that Eric had harbored deep concerns regarding his wife's financial practices and his own physical safety in the years preceding his death. In 2020, Eric discovered that Corey had secretly secured a $150,000 line of credit against their primary residence, A, property that Eric had owned solely prior to their marriage. She had allegedly utilized these funds, along with other unauthorized loans, to finance her. Rapidly expanding real estate and home flipping business, K. Richens Realty. When Eric confronted her about the deception, the revelation caused a profound rift in marriage. Concerned for the financial security of his 3 sons, Eric secretly consulted an estate planning attorney. He established a private trust designating his sister, Katie, as the trustee and executor of his estate, and naming his 3 sons as the sole beneficiaries, effectively removing Corey from direct control of his assets. He also began the process of exploring divorce options, though the couple ultimately chose to undergo marriage counseling and remain together. The financial strain on Corey, however, continued to mount. Her business model relied heavily on high-interest, short-term loans to purchase and renovate distressed properties. Her most ambitious project was a massive, unfinished estate in Midway, Utah, valued at nearly $3 million, which she hoped to transform into a lucrative wedding and event venue. To finalize this purchase and fund the necessary renovations, she desperately needed a substantial influx of capital that was tied up in her husband's estate and secured by his strict estate planning measures. The friction between Corey and Eric's family erupted into open hostility in the days immediately following his death. On the morning after his passing, Corey contacted a locksmith to gain entry to a safe containing Eric's legal documents. Upon discovering this, Eric's sister, Amy, confronted Corey at the residence. The confrontation escalated into a physical altercation, during which Corey allegedly assaulted Amy. Corey was subsequently arrested and eventually entered a plea of no contest to charges of assault. This violent incident set the stage for a series of civil lawsuits over the control of Eric's estate, cut off from the funds she had anticipated receiving. Upon his death, Corey's financial situation deteriorated rapidly. The Midway mansion was ultimately lost to foreclosure, and several former clients and business associates came forward with allegations of severe financial misconduct. One of Corey's close friends, Chelsea Barney, revealed that she had given Corey $45,000 as a down payment on a home purchase that Corey was facilitating. Chelsea later discovered that the deed had never been properly recorded, resulting in the foreclosure of the property and the loss of her life savings. Another family filed a lawsuit alleging that a home purchase from Corey was plagued by severe toxic mold and structural issues, leading to severe illness and financial ruin. In addition to the financial motives, investigators uncovered a pattern of behavior suggesting prior attempts on Eric's life. During a trip to Greece in 2019, Eric had become violently ill after consuming a beverage, later telling his sister that he believed Corey had attempted to poison him. More recently, on Valentine's Day of 2022, just weeks before his death, Corey had purchased a sandwich for Eric from a local bagel shop. Shortly after consuming a portion of the sandwich, Eric suffered a severe physiological reaction requiring the use of his son's epinephrine injector and a significant dose of antihistamines. He survived the episode, but sent a text message to a friend stating that he believed his wife was trying to poison him. The critical breakthrough in the criminal investigation came when detectives, working alongside a private investigator hired by the Richens family, performed a comprehensive analysis of Corey's communication records. They identified frequent, detailed interactions between Corey and an associate named Carmen. Lauber, a woman with a history of drug-related offenses who had occasionally performed cleaning services for Corey's real estate business. Upon executing a search warrant at Lauber's residence, officers discovered drug paraphernalia and a copy of Eric's obituary displayed on a mirror. Confronted with the evidence, Lauber agreed to cooperate with the prosecution in exchange for immunity. She informed detectives that Corey had requested her assistance in procuring strong prescription pain medication on 2 separate occasions in early 2022, specifically asking for something potent. The timeline of these transactions aligned with the events surrounding Eric's near-fatal illness on Valentine's Day and his subsequent death on the 4th of March. Phone records indicated that on the day of the Valentine's Day sandwich, 30 text messages were exchanged between Corey and Lauber. In May of 2023, Corey Richens was arrested and charged with aggravated murder and multiple counts of possession of controlled substances with the intent to distribute. The public reaction was one of profound shock. The grieving widow who had written a touching book on childhood grief was now accused of orchestrating the cold-blooded murder of her husband. While awaiting trial in the local jail, Corey continued to engage in behavior that drew the attention of the prosecution. During a routine search of her cell, deputies discovered a handwritten, 4-page letter addressed to her mother. The letter, which began with the phrase, "Walk the dog," contained detailed instructions for Corey's brother regarding what he should testify to if called to the stand. Specifically, it suggested he should claim that Eric had admitted to obtaining pain medication and fentanyl from workers at a ranch in Mexico. The prosecution characterized this letter as clear evidence of witness tampering. The defense, however, argued that the document was merely a draft of a fictional manuscript or a privileged communication intended for her legal team, asserting that its seizure violated attorney-client privilege. In March of 2024, prosecutors amended the charges to include attempted murder, specifically relating to the Valentine's Day sandwich incident. They also introduced evidence of a secret, long-term romantic relationship between Corey and a handyman named Josh Grossman. Text messages retrieved from their devices revealed that they had communicated daily, expressing deep affection and discussing a future together. In the weeks preceding Eric's death, Corey had texted Grossman, asking him to hang in until Friday, promising that life would soon be different. The trial commenced in a packed courtroom in Summit County. The prosecution, led by Brad Bloodworth, presented a comprehensive case detailing Corey's immense debt, her secret affair, the testimony of the drug supplier, and the suspicious circumstances of the prior poisoning attempts. A key moment in the trial occurred when Josh Grossman took the stand. Visible, shook, and emotional, he testified to the depth of his relationship with Corey and her dreams of starting a new life with him at the Midway estate. Most significantly, he recalled a conversation that took place in a vehicle shortly after Eric's death, during which Corey had asked him if he had ever taken a life during his military service in Iraq and how that experience had made him feel. The prosecution's presentation of evidence spanned 13 days, featuring numerous financial experts, digital forensics analysts, and personal friends of the family. When the state rested its case, the courtroom prepared for the defense's response, which was expected to last more than a week. In a dramatic development that stunned those in attendance, Corey's defense attorneys stood and announced that they were resting their case immediately, without calling a single witness or presenting any testimony. This strategic decision suggested that the defense believed the prosecution had failed to meet its high burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt, choosing to rely entirely on their closing arguments to convince the jury. Following brief deliberations lasting just under 3 hours, the jury returned with a unanimous verdict. Corey Richins was found guilty on all counts, including aggravated murder and attempted murder. The reading of the verdict brought an emotional conclusion to a case that had devastated a community and left 3 young boys without parents. Eric's family expressed relief that justice had been served, noting that while the void left by his passing could never be filled, they could finally begin the process of healing. The story of these 2 cases, though geographically and contextually distinct, offers a profound look into the dark corners of human psychology. It highlights devastating impact of greed, deception, and the absolute disregard for human life. Yet, it also serves as a testament to the relentless dedication of law. Enforcement officers who utilize cutting-edge science and traditional detective work to uncover the truth and ensure that justice ultimately triumphs over evil. The anatomy of deception and the triumph of justice, a comparative study in criminal psychology. Chapter 1, The Illusion of the Perfect Life. The human mind possesses a remarkable capacity to construct facades. In the quiet, scenic landscapes of our communities, where life appears to flow with predictable serenity, there sometimes exist individuals who build elaborate structures of deception. To the external observer, these lives seem complete, even enviable. Yet beneath the polished surface lies a precarious reality, driven by secret motivations that eventually fracture the peace of those around them. In the mountain communities of Summit County, Utah, the landscape is defined by majestic peaks, clean air, and an abundance of natural beauty. It was here that Corey Richens and her husband, Eric Richens, established their family. To their neighbors and friends, they represented the quintessential success story of the modern American family. Eric was a 39-year-old man of vibrant health, known for his deep commitment to his family, his religious faith, and his highly successful stonemasonry business. He was an outdoorsman who worked hard on his family cattle ranch and played just as hard, engaging in youth soccer coaching, hunting, and exploring the wilderness with his 3 young boys, who were 10, 9, and 6 years old. Corey Richens was an ambitious entrepreneur. She had built a real estate business named K. Richens Realty, focusing on purchasing, renovating, and flipping residential properties. Her career was expanding rapidly, and she spoke frequently of her dreams to move from a modest background to the upper echelons of local society. She had grown up in the area, often cleaning the homes of wealthy residents in Park City, and she harbored a deep-seated desire to be the owner of such properties rather than the one maintaining them. In 2019, Corey and Eric seemed to have achieved a level of affluence that matched their ambitions. They traveled together, dined at expensive restaurants, and enjoyed the respect of their peers. However, the reality within their household was far more complicated than the public image suggested. The psychological profile of an individual driven by extreme financial ambition often reveals a pattern of risk-taking behavior. For Corey, the desire to acquire a massive, unfinished estate in Midway, Utah, valued at nearly $3 million, became an obsession. She envisioned converting this distressed mansion into a luxurious event space for weddings, a project that would require millions of dollars in additional funding. To finance this ambition, she began securing short-term, high-interest loans, commonly referred to as hard money. Loans. These financial instruments are notoriously risky, carrying high interest rates and strict repayment terms. As the pressure of these debts mounted, the division between Corey's public presentation and her private desperation began to widen. In 2020, Eric made a troubling discovery. He learned that his wife had taken out a $250,000 line of credit against their family home, a property that he owned solely. This financial transaction had been completed without his knowledge or consent. This discovery shattered the trust within the marriage and prompted Eric to seek the guidance of a divorce attorney and an estate planner to protect his children and ensure their financial security. Eric made the decision to alter his estate planning. He created a trust designating his sister, Katie Richens Benson, as the executor and trustee, and naming his 3 young sons as the sole beneficiaries. He also placed the family home into the trust, effectively ensuring that Corey would not have direct access to these assets in the event of his death, although the couple continued to live together and attended counseling. The underlying trust had been permanently damaged. The tension within the household was compounded by another secret. Corey had begun a years-long relationship with a 41-year-old handyman named Josh Grossman, whom she had hired to assist with her property renovations. The two communicated almost daily, exchanging text messages that revealed a deep emotional connection and a shared desire for a future together. For Corey, this relationship represented an escape from the constraints of her marriage and her mounting financial obligations. In her messages to Josh, she painted a picture of a dream life where they would live together in the guest house of the massive Midway mansion, running the event center and raising children together free from the presence of her husband. The psychological distress of managing these parallel lives, the crushing weight of millions of dollars in debt, the secret romantic relationship, and the knowledge that her husband had restricted her access to his wealth created a volatile psychological environment in the mind of an individual with narcissistic tendencies, the obstacles preventing the realization of their desires are often viewed not as problems to be solved through negotiation or legal separation, but as threats that must be eliminated. Chapter 2, A Sudden End and a Literary Creation. The transition from psychological distress to criminal action is often marked by a series of deliberate escalatory steps. For Eric Richens, the warning signs, had appeared long before the fatal night. In 2019, during a trip to Greece, Eric became violently ill after drinking what was supposed to be a non-alcoholic beverage because he was taking medication for Lyme disease. Alcohol was highly toxic to his system. He suspected at the time that his wife had attempted to poison him, a concern he shared with his sister Katie. A similar, more severe incident occurred on Valentine's Day in 2022. Corey had purchased a sandwich from a local establishment and brought it home for Eric, leaving an affectionate note. Within minutes of taking a bite, Eric suffered a severe reaction. He used his son's epinephrine auto-injector, took antihistamines, and fell into a deep sleep. Later, he texted a friend expressing his belief that his wife had tried to poison him, stating that he had almost been lost that time. Despite these terrifying incidents, Eric remained in the home, perhaps driven by his dedication to his 3 sons and his desire to maintain a stable environment for them. This decision, while understandable from the perspective of a loving father, placed him in extreme danger. On the night of March 3rd, 2022, Corey claimed they were celebrating a significant financial milestone for her real estate business. Hours later, at approximately 3 o'clock in the morning on March 4th, Corey placed a call to the emergency services number 911. She reported that her husband was cold to the touch and not breathing. When emergency personnel and law enforcement officers arrived at the home, they found Eric lying on his back on the bedroom floor. He had no pulse and was not breathing. Paramedics initiated cardiopulmonary resuscitation utilizing a mechanical device that created a rhythmic mechanical sound in the background of the police body-worn camera footage. Corey stood nearby, explaining to the officers that they had shared a drink earlier in the evening to celebrate her business success, after which she had gone to sleep in her son's bedroom because the child was experiencing night terrors. She claimed that when she returned to her own bedroom later in the night, she found her husband unresponsive. The initial response from the scene was one of confusion. An emergency medical technician noted a significant amount of blood near the deceased, which led to an early hypothesis that Eric might have suffered a ruptured aneurysm. To the casual observer, the death of a healthy, active 39-year-old man was a tragedy, but one that might have had a natural medical explanation. In the weeks following her husband's death, Corey began to reposition herself in the eyes of the public. Rather than retreating into quiet mourning, she chose to channel her experience into a creative endeavor. She hired a ghostwriter to assist her in composing a children's book titled, Are You With Me? The book was designed to help children cope with the loss of a parent, written from the Perspective of a young boy wondering if his deceased father was still present in his life, and concluding with the father's reassuring perspective from beyond the grave. Corey dedicated the book to her husband, describing him as an amazing partner and a wonderful father. She embarked on a public relations campaign, appearing on local television and radio programs to promote the book and share her story of grief and resilience. To the viewers at home, she appeared to be a courageous young mother, navigating the ultimate tragedy with grace and determination. Her performance was convincing, earning her the sympathy and admiration of her community. Yet, behind this carefully constructed narrative of maternal devotion and literary healing, a professional criminal investigation was quietly unfolding. The county coroner's office had conducted an autopsy, a standard legal requirement for any unexpected death of a young, healthy individual. The results of the toxicology report would dismantle Corey's public image and expose the dark reality of what had transpired within the walls of the Summit County home. Chapter 3, The Toxicology Report and the Secret Network. The science of toxicology provides an objective, immutable record of the final hours of a person's life. When a medical examiner completed the report for Eric Richens, the findings were stark and undeniable. The cause of death was determined to be acute drug intoxication, specifically from the substance fentanyl. The concentration of fentanyl found in Eric's system was extraordinary, measuring 5 times the dosage required to be lethal to an average human being. Furthermore, the analysis indicated that the substance was not medical grade. Fentanyl, which is typically administered in controlled environments under the supervision of a physician. Instead, it was illicitly manufactured fentanyl, the type produced by clandestine laboratories and distributed through illegal street networks. This scientific revelation immediately transformed a tragic medical mystery into a homicide investigation. The Summit County Sheriff's Office, led by a dedicated team of investigators, recognized that Eric Richens did not have a history of illicit drug use. He was a successful business owner, a dedicated father, and a devout member of his church. The presence of a massive, lethal quantity of street-level fentanyl in his system suggested that the drug had been administered to him without his knowledge or consent. To solve this crime, investigators had to determine how a wealthy businessman in an affluent community had come into possession of a deadly street drug. The process required a meticulous examination of communication records and financial transactions. A private investigator retained by the Richens family to look into the suspicious circumstances surrounding Eric's death secured access to telephone records, and electronic data. This analysis revealed a consistent pattern of communication between Corey Richins and two other individuals in the months immediately preceding and following Eric's death. One of these individuals was her mother, Lisa Darden. The other was a woman named Carmen Lauber, who had previously worked for Corey's cleaning and renovation business. Carmen Lauber was known to local law enforcement. She had a history of involvement with illicit drugs and was participating in a court-ordered drug treatment program. Recognizing the potential significance of this connection, investigators initiated surveillance on Lauber. A search of her residential trash revealed evidence of drug paraphernalia, providing law enforcement with the probable cause necessary to secure a search warrant for her home. During the execution of the search warrant at Lauber's residence, investigators made two critical discoveries. They found an illegal firearm, which Lauber was prohibited from possessing due to her status as a convicted felon. More significantly, taped to a mirror in her bedroom was a copy of Eric Richins' obituary. Faced with the prospect of significant prison time for the drug and weapon violations, Lauber agreed to cooperate with the authorities. Her testimony provided the crucial link that investigators needed to connect Corey Richins to the lethal drug. Lauber revealed that Corey had contacted her on two separate occasions in early 2022, requesting that she procure strong pain medication, specifically fentanyl, for an investor who was allegedly dealing with a back injury. Lauber agreed to facilitate the transaction, contacting a local dealer named Robert Crozier. The transactions were completed with Corey paying for the substances with business checks and cash. According to Lauber, after the first delivery, Corey contacted her again, stating that the pills were not strong enough and requesting a more potent dosage. This second exchange occurred on February 26th, just 6 days before Eric's death. The timing of these transactions aligned perfectly with the events in the Richins household. The telephone records showed that on February 14th, the day Eric was poisoned by the sandwich, there had been 30 text messages exchanged between Corey and Carmen Lauber. The coordination between the acquisition of the drug and the physical symptoms suffered by Eric provided a clear chronological map of a planned homicide. Chapter for the case for the prosecution. With the scientific evidence of the toxicology report and the direct testimony of the drug intermediary, the state of Utah proceeded to file formal charges against Corey Richins. She was arrested on May 8th, 2023, and charged with 1 count of aggravated murder and multiple counts of possession of illicit substances with the intent to distribute. the arrest of a well-known local business owner and the author of a popular children's book on grief sent shockwaves through the community. The narrative of the grieving widow was replaced by a complex, high-profile legal battle. During the initial bail hearings, the prosecution, led by attorney Brad Bloodworth, presented a comprehensive overview of the evidence against the defendant. A forensic accountant testified regarding the state of Corey's finances, painting a picture of a woman facing imminent financial ruin. At the time of Eric's death, Corey owed over $4,500,000 to more than 20 different lenders. Her ambitious real estate ventures had left her in deep debt, and she had recently lost her prized Midway mansion to foreclosure. The prosecution argued that her primary motivation for the murder was financial survival. She believed that her husband's death would provide her with a substantial inheritance and access to life insurance policies that would rescue her from bankruptcy. Furthermore, the prosecution introduced evidence of the defendant's digital activity following the execution of a search warrant at her home. Once she realized that law enforcement was investigating her husband's death as a homicide, her internet searches became increasingly specific. She searched for luxury prisons for the rich in America, whether law enforcement could recover deleted messages on an iPhone, what a death certificate would list as the cause of death if someone was poisoned, and what constituted a lethal dose of fentanyl. The defense, initially led by attorney Sky Lozaro, argued that these searches were a natural human reaction to being accused of a horrific crime. They contended that any innocent person accused of poisoning their spouse would naturally search the internet to understand the nature of the allegations against them. They also emphasized that a thorough search of the Richens' home had yielded no physical traces of fentanyl, arguing that the prosecution's case was entirely circumstantial and relied on the testimony of individuals with criminal histories who had been offered plea deals in exchange for their cooperation. However, the state's case was bolstered by a surprising discovery made during a routine search of Corey's jail cell. Officers uncovered a 4-page handwritten letter, which became known as the Walk the Dog letter. The document, written by Corey, was addressed to her mother and contained instructions for her brother, Ronnie. In the letter, Corey outlined a specific narrative that she wanted her brother to present, suggesting that he should testify that Eric had obtained pain pills and fentanyl from workers at his ranch in Mexico. The prosecution argued that this letter was clear evidence of witness tampering and consciousness of guilt, an attempt to fabricate an alternative explanation for the presence of the drug in Eric's system. The defense countered that the letter was actually a draft of a fictional manuscript, a creative writing, exercise that had been misconstrued by the authorities. The legal proceedings grew even more complex when, in March of 2024, the prosecution amended the complaint to include a charge of attempted murder, specifically relating to the Valentine's Day sandwich incident. This addition of charges occurred alongside a significant change in the defense team. Sky Lozero withdrew from the case due to a conflict of interest and was replaced by experienced public defenders Kathy Nestor and Wendy Lewis. This transition delayed the trial as the new defense team worked to master the voluminous evidence in the case. Chapter 5: The Trial and the Verdict. The trial of Corey Richins began nearly 3 years after her arrest, drawing national attention to the small courthouse near Park City, Utah. The courtroom was filled with family members, journalists, and curious observers, all eager to witness the resolution of a case that had captured the public imagination. The jury consisted of 8 individuals, 6 men and 2 women, who were tasked with evaluating the evidence without prejudice. Among them was the jury. 4-person Laura, who had entered the courtroom with virtually no prior knowledge of the case, having avoided the sensational headlines that had dominated the local media. In his opening statement, Prosecutor Brad Bloodworth laid out a clear, methodical narrative. He presented the defendant as a woman trapped by her own ambitions, who viewed her husband not as a partner, but as a financial obstacle. He detailed her mounting debts, her secret romantic relationship with Josh Grossman, and the calculated steps she took to acquire the lethal dose of fentanyl. The defense focused their opening statement on the lack of direct physical evidence. They urged the jury to ignore the years of financial struggles and personal drama, and instead focus entirely on the 6-hour window leading up to Eric's death. They argued that the state could not prove how the drug had entered Eric's system, and that without a definitive explanation of the physical mechanism of delivery, the jury could not convict. The state's witness list was long and impactful. Eric's sister, Katie Richins Benson, gave emotional testimony describing the devastating phone call she received from her father on the morning of Eric's death. She spoke of her brother's love for his children and his dedication to his family, providing a stark contrast to the defendant's actions. Carmen Lauber took the stand, testifying under a grant of immunity. She recounted her interactions with Corey detail by detail, describing how she had purchased the fentanyl and delivered it to the defendant. Despite intense cross-examination by the defense, who sought to undermine her credibility by highlighting her criminal history and drug addiction, Lauber remained resolute in her testimony, insisting that she was participating in the trial to take responsibility for her role in the tragedy. The most anticipated witness of the trial was Josh Grossman, the defendant's former lover. He appeared in the courtroom slouched and visibly uncomfortable, speaking in a quiet Southern accent. The prosecution displayed the text messages between Josh and Corey on a large screen, allowing the jury to read the intimate exchanges that had occurred in the weeks preceding the murder. Grossman became emotional on the stand, admitting that he had been deeply in love with Corey and had believed her promises of a future together. The emotional peak of his testimony occurred when he described a conversation they had shared in her car shortly after Eric's death. He testified that Corey had asked him if he had ever killed anyone during his military service in Iraq, and had followed up by asking how that experience had made him feel. This revelation provided the jury with a chilling insight into the defendant's psychological state. Following 13 days of testimony from the prosecution, the defense was expected to present a robust case lasting up to 10 days. However, in a move that stunned the courtroom, Corey's defense team announced that they were resting their case immediately without calling a single witness. The defendant had chosen to waive her right to testify following the advice of her counsel. This tactical decision suggested that the defense believed the prosecution had failed to meet its burden of proof, or that presenting their own witnesses would expose their client to further damaging cross-examination. After closing arguments and detailed instructions from Judge Mrazek, the jury retired to deliberate. The process was swift. In just under 3 hours, the jury returned with a unanimous verdict. Corey Richins was found guilty of aggravated murder, attempted murder, and insurance fraud. The jury foreperson, Laura, later shared that the deliberations had been serious and thorough, with the jurors carefully discussing the elements of each charge to ensure that the burden of proof had been met. Ultimately, an overwhelming pattern of financial desperation, drug acquisition, and consciousness of guilt left no room for reasonable doubt. Outside the courthouse, Eric's family and friends gathered to embrace one another, expressing a profound sense of relief that justice had been served. While the verdict could not fill the void left by Eric's death, it provided a sense of closure. The 3 young boys who had lost their father to violence and their mother to the justice system were adopted by Eric's sister, surrounded by a supportive network of family members dedicated to their healing and well-being. Chapter 6, A Disappearance in Paso Robles. While the mountain communities of Utah were grappling with the trial of Corey, Richins a different kind of mystery had unfolded years earlier in the rolling. Hills of Paso Robles, California, known for its picturesque vineyards, ancient oak trees, and quiet ranch-style properties, Paso Robles is a destination, defined by its natural beauty and peaceful atmosphere. It was here along El Faro Road that 62-year-old Nancy Woodrum made her home. Nancy was a beloved fixture in the local community, known for her vibrant personality, her work as a skilled hairdresser at her downtown salon, Strand, and her devotion as a member of the Jehovah's Witnesses. She lived alone on a beautiful property she had named Paradise Ranch, which she and her late husband, Robert, had lovingly renovated from a fixer-upper into a welcoming vacation rental. Nancy's daughter, Amanda, shared a close bond with her mother. They shared a profession, a passion for horseback riding, and a deep religious faith. 4. Nancy, Paradise Ranch was more than just a home. It was a physical representation of her hope for a peaceful future. On Friday, May 4th, 2018, a large group of wedding guests checked into the main house at Paradise Ranch. The party, consisting of more than 20 individuals, was celebrating a vineyard wedding at a nearby winery. The bride was staying in the guest house on the property, and she recalled meeting Nancy, who had welcomed her with a warm embrace and kind words. The following day, Saturday, May 5th, Amanda received a call from a member of her mother's congregation. Nancy had failed to appear for a scheduled Bible study, an absence that was highly uncharacteristic for her. Concerned, Amanda asked a neighbor to check on her mother's apartment. The neighbor discovered the door to Nancy's cottage wide open, with the television still broadcasting at a high volume, but Nancy was nowhere to be found. When Amanda arrived at the scene, she discovered a terrifying sight. Inside the cottage, her mother's purse, car keys, cellular phone, and tablet were all sitting on a bench. Her 2 vehicles were parked outside. However, the bedding from her mother's bed was missing, and there were large, dark stains on the carpet. Looking closer at the walls, Amanda saw what appeared to be blood spatter. Realizing that her mother was in grave danger, she immediately contacted the emergency services number 911. The call was received by the San Luis Obispo County Sheriff's Office, and Senior Deputy Clinton Cole was dispatched to the scene. Cole, an experienced investigator, immediately recognized the cottage as a violent crime scene. There were no signs of forced entry, but the presence of blood on the floor, the headboard, and a remaining pillow indicated that a violent struggle had taken place. The investigation was immediately faced with a daunting challenge. The property was currently occupied by more than 20 wedding guests who had been present on the night Nancy disappeared. These individuals, who had traveled for various locations to attend the celebration had to be considered potential suspects. The peaceful vacation rental had transformed in an instant into a complex. High-stakes crime scene, taped off and surrounded by search dogs, helicopters, and forensic investigators. Chapter 7: The Breadcrumbs of Evidence. The search for Nancy Woodrum required a coordinated effort across the rugged foothills of Paso Robles. On the evening of the disappearance, an officer with the California Highway Patrol discovered several items of bedding and clothing discarded along La Ponza Road, approximately 6 miles from the crime scene. The items included a blood-stained pillow, a dress, a pair of shorts, and a shirt. Investigators brought these items to the forensic laboratory, where Amanda confirmed that they belonged to her mother. This discovery suggested a grim reality. Nancy had been wrapped in her own bedding and transported away from her home, either severely injured or deceased. As the wedding guests returned to the property from the celebration, they were met by law enforcement officers who secured a search warrant for the entire ranch. The scene was chaotic, with families and children unable to return to their rooms as forensic technicians meticulously searched the area. Detective Clinton Cole and his team began the arduous process of interviewing every individual on the property. They focused on establishing a precise timeline because the bride was sleeping in a room separated from Nancy's apartment by a single wall. Investigators were surprised to learn that she had heard nothing unusual during the night. She had returned from the rehearsal. Dinner around 10:30 in the evening, used earplugs, and slept through the night. One wedding guest, however, drew the suspicion of investigators. He had not attended the rehearsal dinner, claiming he had remained alone at the property. During initial questioning, his answers were vague, and he subsequently became uncooperative, refusing to speak with detectives on the phone. To resolve this lead, Detective Cole and his partner traveled to the guests' home in Northern California. Upon their arrival, the man's demeanor had changed. He was cooperative and agreed to provide a cheek swab for a deoxyribonucleic acid sample. His wife also provided photographs from her mobile phone that placed him at the rehearsal dinner, successfully clearing him of any involvement. With the wedding guests eliminated as suspects, investigators turned their attention to other individuals who had access to Paradise Ranch. Nancy had recently decided to sell the property to dedicate herself fully to her religious ministry, and several contractors, painters, and plumbers have been working on the estate to prepare it for sale. Among the items found near Nancy's tablet was a business card for a painter, Named Carlo Fuentes Flores. When contacted by Detective Cole, Fuentes was cooperative and friendly. claiming he had seen nothing unusual during his time working on the property. Another potential suspect was Sean Bloom, a general contractor who had recently been terminated by Nancy following a heated dispute over payment. Bloom had sent contentious text messages threatening legal action if he did not receive his money. During his initial interview, Bloom admitted his dislike for Nancy, but vehemently denied any involvement in her disappearance. He eventually agreed to provide a deoxyribonucleic acid sample, which did not match the evidence found at the scene, clearing him of suspicion. Investigators also had to consider a highly personal angle. Nancy Haddon, a estranged son, Chad, with whom she had not spoken in 5 years. The relationship had been bitter, with Chad expressing anger toward his mother's religious beliefs and refusing to allow her to see her grandchildren. Surprisingly, records showed that Chad and Nancy had exchanged text messages on the night before her disappearance. When approached by detectives, Chad was defensive and refused to provide a voluntary deoxyribonucleic acid sample, stating that he did not trust law enforcement. Investigators placed him under surveillance, eventually securing his discarded beverage containers after he was arrested for driving with an open container of alcohol. The subsequent laboratory analysis cleared him, leaving the investigation at a frustrating standstill. Chapter 8: The Virtual Boundary. In late 2018, as the months passed without any significant leads, the pressure on the San Luis Obispo County Sheriff's Office increased. The public was anxious, and the family was desperate for answers. It was during this challenging period that investigators decided to utilize an innovative digital investigative tool, geofencing. A geofence is a virtual boundary established around a specific geographic location by securing a search warrant for Google location data. Investigators can identify any active mobile devices that entered that specific boundary during a precise window of time. The investigators had established a critical point in their timeline. An analysis of Nancy's telephone records revealed that an attempted emergency call to 911 had been initiated from her phone at midnight 17 on the night she disappeared. The call had lasted 0 seconds, indicating that the connection had been instantly severed. This provided investigators with an exact time of the assault. The sheriff's office served a search warrant on Google requesting location data for a virtual boundary surrounding Nancy's cottage and the immediate driveway. During the early morning hours of May 5th, the results returned by Google provided a series of device numbers, which are unique identifiers assigned to individual mobile units, while the location data for the wedding guests showed their devices remaining Dormant within the main house, a single device stood out. This device pinged. Inside Nancy's studio apartment at 1:33 and again at 1:52. In the morning, the exact window during which investigators believed Nancy had been taken. A subsequent search warrant for the subscriber information associated with that device return name, Carlo Fuentes Flores, the unassuming painter who had been working on the ranch. This revelation was a profound shock to the investigation. Fuentes had no criminal record in either the United States or Mexico, was married, had a young daughter whom he spoke of with great affection, and was regarded by his employer as a polite, professional, and reliable worker. There was no obvious motive for why this man would commit a violent crime against a client who had treated him with kindness. To understand the psychological motivation behind the crime, investigators conducted a thorough analysis of Fuentes' digital activity. They discovered a hidden aspect of his personality that contrasted sharply with his public persona. His search history revealed a consistent interest in adult content, featuring older women, often searching for terms related to mature individuals, in intimate apparel. Additionally, his phone contained numerous self-recorded videos of sexual encounters with various women, and his employer recalled that Fuentes had recently begun drinking heavily and seeking out adult entertainment services during work trips. This digital evidence suggested a predatory focus on older women, a psychological element that aligned with the victim's profile. To secure an arrest, investigators needed physical evidence connecting Fuentes directly to the assault. They initiated surveillance on him, following him to a local restaurant where he had lunch with his wife. When Fuentes departed, leaving behind a glass beverage container, plainclothes officers retrieved the item and submitted it to the forensic laboratory for analysis. The results were definitive. The deoxyribonucleic acid recovered from the beverage container matched the profile obtained from the bloody handprint found on the pillow in Nancy's bedroom. The painter's secret life had intersected with a brutal reality, providing investigators with the evidence necessary to bring him to justice. Chapter 9: Confrontation and Confession. On the day of the interrogation, Carlo Fuentes Flores entered the interview room at the sheriff's substation in Templeton, believing he was merely assisting with a routine follow-up regarding the missing person case. He sat across from Detective Clinton Cole and his partner, speaking politely and answering questions about his painting work at Paradise Ranch. Investigators spent the first portion of the interview establishing his familiarity with the property. Fuentes confirmed that he had worked on the decks of the main house and had used the restrooms near Nancy's studio, placing him directly at the scene. He continued to deny any knowledge of her disappearance, claiming that he had only heard about it from his employer. The atmosphere in the room shifted when Detective Cole asked Fuentes directly if he was involved in Nancy's disappearance. Fuentes denied the accusation, maintaining a calm demeanor. At that point, Cole revealed the scientific evidence. He informed Fuentes that they had recovered his deoxyribonucleic acid from the blood-stained pillow in Nancy's bedroom, and that they knew he had returned to the property in the middle of the night. The psychological impact of this revelation was immediate. Fuentes' posture changed, and he began to tremble. Realizing that his denials were futile, he made a partial confession, claiming that his involvement was the result of a tragic accident. He told detectives that he had returned to the ranch late at night to retrieve some painting equipment, and while backing up his vehicle, had accidentally struck Nancy, who had walked up behind his truck. He claimed that he had carried her inside her home to assist her, and that she had subsequently collapsed. Investigators did not accept this accidental narrative. They challenged the discrepancies in his story, pointing out that an accidental collision would not explain the presence of a bloody handprint on a pillow or the severe blood spatter on the walls of her bedroom. Under continued questioning, Fuentes abandoned the accidental collision story and confessed to the full extent of his actions. He admitted that he had been drinking heavily on the night of the crime. After sitting in a church parking lot for nearly 30 minutes, contemplating his actions, he drove to Paradise Ranch with the intention of sexually assaulting Nancy. He entered her home, assaulted her to prevent her from calling for help, which explained the interrupted emergency call at midnight 17, and subsequently raped her. Afterward, fearing that he would be identified and arrested for the assault, he held a pillow over her face for 45 minutes until she stopped breathing. Fuentes then offered to lead the detectives to the location where he had hidden Nancy's remains. He was placed in the back of a police vehicle and directed the investigators on an hour-long journey east from Paso Robles, deep into the remote wilderness of the Carrizo Plain. The search in the rugged, dry landscape was physically demanding. Fuentes was visibly emotional, weeping and expressing regret as he struggled to identify the precise location in the vast terrain. After searching several spots, Detective Cole noticed a small, unnatural pile of rocks near a dry creek bed. Upon closer inspection, investigators discovered human remains, including a skull and skeletal fragments scattered by animal activity. The identification of Nancy's remains provided the family with the definitive proof they needed to begin the process of mourning, confirming the tragic end to a life defined by kindness and community service. Chapter 10, The Pursuit of Resolution and Healing. The legal resolution of the Nancy Woodrum case highlighted the meticulous preparation of the prosecution and the resilience of the victim's family. Following his arrest, Carlo Fuentes Flores was held in the San Luis Obispo County Jail. During his incarceration, jail personnel monitored his telephone calls with his wife, during which he admitted his responsibility for the crime, expressing remorse but acknowledging the severity of his actions. Despite these admissions, Fuentes initially pleaded not guilty. His defense attorney filed a motion to suppress the recorded interrogation, arguing that because Fuentes was a native Spanish speaker, his Miranda warnings should have been administered in Spanish, or a professional interpreter should have been present. The prosecution countered by presenting video evidence of the interrogation, demonstrating that Fuentes had lived and worked in the United States for 2 decades, spoke fluent English, and had explicitly confirmed his understanding of his rights at the beginning of the interview. The judge denied the defense motion, ruling that his constitutional rights had been fully preserved. In January of 2022, as the trial was set to begin, Fuentes opted to enter a slow plea. Under this legal arrangement, the defendant waives his right to a jury trial and allows the judge to review the evidence directly. In exchange, the prosecution agreed not to seek the death penalty, ensuring a swift resolution without subjecting the family to a lengthy and painful trial. The judge reviewed the comprehensive evidence presented by the prosecution, including the digital location data, the scientific deoxyribonucleic acid analysis, and the recorded confessions. Fuentes was found guilty of first-degree murder with the special circumstance of committing the murder during a rape and burglary. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. At the sentencing hearing, Nancy's daughter, Amanda, read a powerful victim impact statement expressing the profound loss experienced by her family and the community. She spoke of her mother's strength, her beautiful heart, and the tragic injustice of a retirement cut short by a senseless act of violence. Today, the memory of Nancy Woodrum is preserved by those who loved her. Amanda continues to run her mother's salon, maintaining the connection they shared. Through their craft, she also continues the family tradition of horseback riding her mother's favorite horse, Montana, alongside her own daughter. This continuity of family, faith, and memory represents the ultimate triumph of light over darkness. While the tragedies in Summit County, Utah, and Paso Robles, California, highlight the capacity of certain individuals for extreme deception and violence, the dedication of the investigative forces, and the resilience of the surviving families serve as a powerful reminder of the enduring nature of justice and the strength of the human spirit. The human mind possesses an extraordinary capacity to construct facades. In the study of criminal psychology, few phenomena are as chilling as the deliberate creation of a public persona designed to mask a dark, private reality. This duality, where an individual presents an image of warmth, empathy, or victimhood to the world while harboring destructive motives behind closed doors, represents one of the most complex challenges for investigative forces. When the mask finally slips, it reveals a stark contrast between the narrative curated for public consumption and the forensic truth preserved by science. The pursuit of justice in such cases requires more than just the gathering of physical evidence.